So a couple weeks ago, I came across this video from the Vlogbrothers called Why Environmentalists Hate Captain Planet. Without going too far into the details, the main takeaway that Hank Green tries to communicate is that the show is incredibly black and white with how it portrays environmentalism, particularly regarding the, quotes, villains of the series. They are portrayed as evil, weird pig-rat animal hybrids with physical deformities who just want to pollute the earth because they're just massive assholes, I guess? Now, I've never seen Captain Planet, so I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on this show, but from what I understand, it portrays the villains as over-the-top caricatures who pollute because they're evil, I guess. And while I'm sure the people who developed this show had good intentions that taught kids overall good messages about environmentalism, the problem with mixing entertainment with real-life environmental issues is that creates not just a jaded and narrow-minded perspective, but also an unrealistic and almost delusional view on the steps needed to actually save the planet. While there are a handful of business tycoons who are genuinely greedy assholes, the people who work in the fossil fuel industry aren't mutant freaks or mustache-twirling villains. They are real-life average Joe people who are just working to provide for themselves and their families. The people who work in fossil fuels don't do the things they do because polluting the earth is fun. They do it because they deliver resources that nations use for everything from powering our cars to the paper and pencils we use at school. While yes, we have reached a point where we need to transition to non-renewable sources of energy now more than ever, we won't be able to accomplish such a goal if we continue promoting demonization and villainization instead of cooperation. And the reason why I'm bringing up Captain Planet and its misguided approach to spreading eco-friendly messages is because there is a much better way to accomplish exactly what this show thinks it's doing. You can create an animated narrative for a young audience that combines both engaging action-adventure while also exploring/highlighting these important environmental concerns and the dangers that will come if no action is taken. As you can probably tell from the title, that inspiring animated narrative isn't Captain Planet. It's Hayao Miyazaki's 1997 film, Princess Mononoke. This is a film that many have described as Miyazaki's, quote, angriest film, and I honestly couldn't agree more with this label. Not only was this the only film in his filmography that had a PG-13 rating in the States before The Wind Rises came along, but when watching the film, you can tell just from things like tone, action set pieces, and overall themes that this is a much darker movie than his normal shtick. I mean, just from a purely visual and surface level perspective alone, people's heads and limbs are getting torn off, and while violence is certainly nothing new when it comes to Miyazaki's films, this is the only one where it gets this explicit and intense. And the reason why Miyazaki goes as hard as he does with the violence isn't for shock value or because it's fun, it's because he uses the violence as an extension of a greater looming threat that permeates throughout Princess Mononoke, and that's the ultimate clash between humanity and nature. Now, environmentalism is nothing new when it comes to Miyazaki's films. It's as much a staple in his movies as milk is in a bowl of cereal, but the reason why I haven't discussed this particular theme in any of my previous Miyazaki videos until now is because, in my opinion, this is the film where Miyazaki is at his most passionate, but also at his angriest about how we need to protect the environment and the disastrous consequences that will occur if we don't save our planet. At the very beginning of the film, we are introduced with this intense, sprawling action scene where our main protagonist, Prince Ashitaka, has to kill this demon-infested boar that we learn later on is the same one that got shot by Lady Eboshi, whom I'll talk about later. But in the process of killing it, Ashitaka gets infected with the curse that was inflicted upon the boar. Now, right off the bat, there is already so much to chew on. Not only is the demon-infested boar a metaphor for how continued human consumption of fossil fuels harms animal and wildlife, but Ashitaka getting cursed himself can also be interpreted as how our continual harming of nature will eventually come to bite us in the ass as well. According to studies, about half the people in the US do not consider climate change to be a major threat, and what a lot of these people seem to argue is that they themselves haven't experienced the supposed effects of this phenomenon. But as you can see today, this argument is becoming less and less persuasive when the effects of climate change are becoming so much more obviously apparent. And this extends to the greater themes that Miyazaki tries to express in Princess Mononoke. Just from this opening 10 minutes, Miyazaki already communicates that if we don't do something now, it's going to hurt us and our loved ones. And as the film goes on, this tension, this violent struggle between humanity and nature becomes worse and more catastrophic. Unlike some of Miyazaki's other films like Totoro and Kiki, where the characters just kind of vibe and lull around as the films feel very warm and welcoming, living their lives as the film goes on, Princess Mononoke is the complete antithesis. The film is almost like a narrative ticking time bomb as the characters are constantly pushed to their absolute limits, doing whatever it takes to do what they believe is right, because if they don't, it can be the end for their worlds. And the two characters that are feeling the brunt of the heat are San and Eboshi. These characters are at the forefront of the greater environmental issue, the environmental activists who want to protect and preserve nature, and the industrialists who destroy it for its natural resources to improve and advance humanity. Two opposing viewpoints at odds that create a devastating conflict that, if not resolved will spell disaster. Let's start with San, who serves as a stand-in for not just environmental activists, but Miyazaki's intense passion for environmentalism in general. San is a young girl who was raised by wolves who will do whatever it takes to protect not just her wolf family, but the forest. And in pretty much any other story like this, a la Avatar, San would normally be the protagonist. She works with her wolf family and later the boars because she recognizes that humans are a dangerous threat that must be killed. And for good reason too. You see from her perspective, the humans do nothing but take from and kill the environment. They rip out the trees and slaughter the beasts, all while using nature's natural resources to power their iron factories and produce the guns that killed animals in the hundreds. San and the rest of the animals, like the boars and the apes, are justified in their actions because they've had their literal homes taken from them, and they understand that if they don't stand up and fight now, they'll lose everything else. But just because she's on the same side as nature doesn't mean that the animals treat her like she's on the same side, as they make numerous references to the fact that she's neither animal nor human. I mean, her own mother recognizes that she will never truly belong because she's human, despite San's outspoken hatred for humanity. San is an incredibly complex character because while she does want to fight to protect the woods and nature, she feels out of place because of the fact that she's human and treated like an outcast in her own home, which is ironic considering her conflict with Lady Eboshi, who, despite being the quote villain of Princess Mononoke, is in many ways the queen of the outcasts. And I honestly don't even feel comfortable using the term villain because Eboshi isn't really a villain per se. Like, yeah, she can come across as cold and is kind of a dick, but as we later see in the film, Eboshi is a good and compassionate person who cares about her people and their well-being. Going back to what I mean about her being a queen of the outcasts, a lot of the residents of Irontown are either overlooked or marginalized people that are treated with respect and compassion. As explicitly stated by this character in the film, Eboshi is the only person who treats the people infected with leprosy with any sort of basic human decency. All the women who work in the iron factories are former prostitutes who Eboshi bought out from the brothel so that they could live free and peaceful lives. Everyone, regardless of who they are treated equally. All the men and women are given equally important and hardworking tasks, and by doing that, Eboshi creates a community that is not only built on respect and compassion, but a population that has better life now because of Eboshi. And in return, the people not only give their undying loyalty to her, but these same people that normal society would have thrown away and ignored ultimately are what makes Eboshi so powerful, as the women are the ones who run the iron factories, and the lepers are the ones responsible for crafting the guns and explosives. And this right here is what was ultimately lacking from Captain Planet, and that's creating realistic portrayals of these so-called polluters, because Eboshi isn't some mutant mustache-twirling freak villain. She's a real person with real human obstacles who just wants to do right for her people. She doesn't rip trees and extract natural resources because it's fun or because she wants to pollute. She's doing it to help Irontown and its people become stronger and improve everyone's well-being, and she neither apologizes nor hesitates because in her opinion, all that matters is that her people get enough to eat and have a place to call home. Hell, the only reason she even kills the deer god is because by doing so, the Emperor can protect her and Irontown from the invading samurai raiders we see throughout the film. As you can see, there are no heroes and villains, there are no right and wrong side, just two people who just want to protect their families and view each other as hostile enemies that must be eliminated. Unlike Captain Planet that showcases environmentalism as a black and white topic, Miyazaki presents the same concept in a much grayer lens. San and Eboshi and the sides they represent have so much hatred and animosity towards each other that they'd rather see one be destroyed instead of finding a way to live in harmony, which is ultimately where Ashitaka comes into this story, as the mediator looking to find peace. Unlike the other two characters, Ashitaka doesn't believe that one side needs to be destroyed for peace to be maintained. There can be a world where both humanity and nature can live side by side, but as showcased in the film, people are so consumed by hatred and fear that they would rather destroy each other, which just results in more pointless death and destruction. Things like greed, pride, and hatred worsens the conflict more and more to the point that the humans shoot off the deer god's head, which in turn causes it to become this force of death, killing everything in its path. With so much violence and destruction from both sides, it leaves you wonder that after the dust settles, what will be left of this world? Who cares if nature or humanity wins the battle if there's nothing left for either side to call home? Why should we even try if there's nothing to change the course of fate? These are questions that Miyazaki presents to his audience, and there is no simple answer. Things like making sure to recycle or always wash with a full load are steps in the right direction, but putting a bandage on a gaping wound doesn't mean it's been healed. The world is an ugly and hard place where people will do violent things, even if it's with good intentions, but in the end, all that will be for nothing if the world would just get fucked in the process. We need to make drastic changes if we want to prevent Earth from being a ball of fire, and to do that, both sides of the environmental issues need to come to the table and work together, because cooperation between nature and humanity is the only way that peace and prosperity can truly be ensured. occurred. And if the older generation isn't going to make that effort, then our trust must go to the current and younger generations who will make the necessary sacrifices to ensure that there will be a bright future, a better tomorrow. As Ashitaka says in the film, life is suffering, it is hard, the world is cursed, but still, you find reasons to keep living, and I couldn't agree more. Captain Planet might provide simple and easy answers, but simple and easy answers aren't reflective of reality, and Miyazaki understands that kids need to know that more than ever. He doesn't sugarcoat how fucked we are, nor does he lie about how much groundwork we must cover to protect the environment. In many ways, especially when considering the current environmental crisis that the world is facing, Princess Mononoke is more relevant now than ever, and if we don't do something soon, all will be lost. But there's still hope. After the deer god's head is returned to its body, the film ends with the wildlife returning to the remainder of what was once Irontown, and while this is only a short-term fix, all the characters understand now more than ever that they need to make drastic changes if they want to do better for their communities. San might not forgive the humans for what they have done, and Eboshi might not be apologetic for the actions she's committed, but they at least can recognize that the paths they went on before are not the solution, and they have to make changes so that everyone, both nature and humanity, can have a better, brighter future. It's a long, arduous journey, one that will probably take decades to follow, but for Miyazaki and myself, if it means a world where both wolf children and human children can live in peace and prosperity, then it's worth it.